Captain Lisa Martinez guided her ship through the docking bay of Haven's rest station with practiced ease. The metal walls around her groaned and creaked as the ship settled into place. She looked out at the other vessels through her small window and sighed. Next to the sleek alien ships, her own vessel looked like a pile of junk someone had welded together. The UES Scrapyard Queen was exactly what her name suggested. Her hull was a patchwork of different colored metal plates. Some were silver, others were rust brown, and a few were painted bright yellow for reasons Lisa had forgotten years ago. Wires hung loose from open panels. Steam leaked from various joints. The whole ship looked like it might fall apart if someone sneezed too hard. Lisa walked through the narrow corridors of her ship. The walls were lined with exposed pipes and cables. Everything hummed and buzzed with barely contained energy. She passed the engine room where Chief Engineer Amy Foster was bent over a control panel. Amy was a small woman with grease-stained coveralls and short red hair. She looked up when Lisa walked by. "Docking clamps are secure," Amy said. "Though I had to kick the left one 3 times to get it to work right." Lisa nodded. Amy could make anything work with enough time and the right application of force. The woman had kept the Scrapyard Queen running for 5 years with nothing but spare parts and determination dot in the navigation room. Katie Johnson was studying star charts on a flickering screen. Katie was young, maybe 25, with blonde hair tied back in a ponytail. She had the kind of spatial awareness that made her perfect for flying through asteroid fields and tight docking bays. "We're right on schedule," Katie reported. "The trade meeting starts in 2 hours." Lisa continued to the communication station where Maya Singh was monitoring alien transmissions. Maya wore her long black hair in a neat bun and spoke 7 different alien languages. She was the closest thing they had to a diplomat on this rust bucket. "The Elven fleet arrived this morning," Maya said without looking up from her equipment. 6 ships. All of them are beautiful. Lisa walked to the main airlock and looked out through the porthole. The Elven ships were indeed beautiful. They looked like they had been grown rather than built. Their hulls were smooth and white like polished bone. They curved in elegant lines that seemed to flow like water. Each ship was 3 times the size of the Scrapyard Queen and looked like it belonged in an art museum. The airlock cycled open, and Lisa stepped onto the station. Haven's Rest was neutral territory where different species could meet and trade. The corridors were wide and clean. Alien beings of all shapes and sizes walked past each other with polite nods. The air smelled of exotic spices and recycled atmosphere. Lisa made her way to the main conference room. She was representing humanity in trade negotiations with the Stellar Empire. The elves controlled some of the richest systems in this part of the galaxy. Humans needed access to their rare metals and energy crystals. In return, Earth could offer food, water, and manufactured goods. The conference room was impressive. It had a high ceiling and walls made of some kind of crystal that sparkled in the light. Representatives from a dozen different species sat around a large oval table. Lisa took her seat and looked around. The Elven delegation sat across from her. They were tall and graceful with pointed ears and silver hair. Their leader was Commander Zarolin, a woman who looked like she had been carved from marble. Her uniform was white and seemed to glow with its own light. Next to her sat Admiral Velthari, an older elf with eyes like chips of ice. Commander Zarolin stood and began to speak. Her voice was musical and carried easily through the room. She talked about the greatness of the Stellar Empire and their advanced technology. She described their bioships as living works of art that could repair themselves and adapt to any threat. Then she looked directly at Lisa and smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Of course," Zarolin said, "not all species have achieved such heights of civilization. Some still cobble together crude machines from scrap metal and hope for the best. Several other aliens at the table turned to look at Lisa. A few made sounds that might have been alien laughter. Lisa felt her face grow hot, but kept her expression neutral. Admiral Valthari spoke next. His voice was cold and formal. The Stellar Empire is willing to consider limited trade agreements with less developed species. However, we must be realistic about what primitive civilizations can offer us. Lisa stood up slowly. She had prepared for this. Maya had warned her that the elves considered humans to be barely civilized barbarians. Humanity may be new to space. Travel, Lisa said, but we have something to offer. Our agricultural techniques can increase crop yields by 40%. Our water purification systems can work in any environment. Our manufacturing processes are efficient and reliable. Commander Zarelin laughed. It sounded like silver bells ringing. Manufacturing processes? We saw your ship in the docking bay. It looks like it was assembled by children, playing with discarded machinery. How can we trust the quality of your products when your own vessels appear ready to fall apart? Other delegates began to murmur among themselves. Lisa heard words like primitive and inferior being translated into various alien languages. Our ships may not look pretty, Lisa said, but they get the job done. Barely, Admiral Velthari replied. Perhaps when humanity develops proper technology, we can discuss meaningful trade partnerships. Until then, the Empire might consider donating some of our older equipment to help your people progress. The meeting continued for another hour, but the tone had been set. The elves treated every human proposal with condescension. They offered tiny amounts of basic materials in exchange for massive quantities of human goods. When Lisa objected to the unfair terms, they suggested that humans should be grateful for any assistance from their betters. Finally, Lisa gathered her papers and stood to leave. We'll consider your generous offer, she said through gritted teeth. As she walked back to her ship, Lisa could hear elven voices behind her. They were not trying to be quiet. Did you see that pathetic excuse for a starship? One voice said. How? Do they even travel between stars and such junk? Another replied. It's amazing they made it here without breaking down. A third voice added with obvious amusement. Lisa reached the docking bay and looked at her ship with new eyes. The scrapyard queen did look terrible compared to the elegant elven vessels. But looks could be deceiving. Amy Foster was waiting at the airlock. How did it go? She asked. About as well as expected, Lisa replied. They think we're primitive savages flying around in garbage. Amy grinned and patted the hull of their ship. If only they knew what this old girl is really capable of. Lisa smiled back. The elves had made a critical error. They had judged humanity by appearances alone. Soon they would learn that in space, looking dangerous was often less important than actually being dangerous. Maya Singh called from the communication station. Captain, I'm picking up some interesting transmissions from the Elven fleet. They're using encryption, but I think I can break it. Lisa hurried inside. Maya was hunched over her equipment with a frown on her face. After a few minutes, she looked up with concern in her eyes. They're planning something, Maya said quietly. I caught fragments about a demonstration of power and tragic accidents. Katie Johnson looked up from her navigation station. Captain, I'm reading energy buildups in the Elven ships. They're charging weapons. Lisa felt ice form in her stomach. The elves were not content with just humiliating humanity at the negotiating table. They wanted to make an example of the primitive humans and their scrap heap ship. Amy, Lisa called to the engine room. How fast can we undock? Give me 3 minutes, Amy's voice came back. Lisa sat in her captain's chair and looked out at the beautiful elven ships. They had no idea what they were about to start. The scrapyard queen might look like junk, but she had teeth. very sharp teeth that had been carefully hidden for years. The hunt was about to begin, but the elves had made a serious mistake about who was the predator and who was the prey. The scrapyard queen pulled away from Haven's rest station with a series of mechanical groans and hisses. Lisa Martinez watched the docking bay shrink behind them as Katie Johnson guided the ship into open space. The elven vessels followed at a distance, their white hulls gleaming like polished bones against the star field. "They're keeping pace with us," Maya Singh reported from her communication station. 6 ships in hunting formation. Lisa nodded. She had expected this. The elves wanted to make sure there were no witnesses when they destroyed the human ship. They would wait until they were far from the neutral station before making their move. Amy Foster climbed up from the engine room, wiping her hands on a greasy rag. "All systems are running smooth," she said. "Well, as smooth as they ever run." On this bucket, the ship shuddered as if to prove her point. A panel fell off somewhere in the back and clattered to the floor. Amy sighed and went to pick it up. "Set course for the Kefter asteroid belt," Lisa ordered. Katie looked at her with surprise. "Captain, that's a dead end. If we go in there, we'll be trapped." "Trust me," Lisa said. The scrapyard queen changed direction and headed toward a field of floating rocks that stretched for millions of miles. The asteroids ranged from small pebbles to chunks of stone the size of cities. They tumbled slowly through space, remnants of a planet that had been destroyed long ago. Behind them, the elven ships adjusted their course to follow. Lisa could see them on the rear display screen. They moved with fluid grace, their biohulls rippling slightly as they changed direction. A communication signal came through. Maya put it on the main speakers. "Human vessel," came a musical voice. It was Commander Zaralin. "You are heading into a dangerous asteroid field. Turn back now or face the consequences." Lisa picked up the microphone. "This is Captain Martinez. We know where we're going. Your primitive navigation systems are no match for this hazard," Zaralin continued. "Return to open space and prepare to be boarded for inspection." "Inspection of what?" Lisa asked. "We have reason to believe you are carrying contraband materials," the elven commander replied. "Weapons that violate the neutral zone treaties." Lisa almost laughed. The elves were not even trying to hide their intentions anymore. They planned to board the human ship, find some excuse to declare it a threat, and then destroy it. "We decline your generous offer," Lisa said into the microphone. "Then you have chosen death," Zaralin replied coldly. The communication channel closed. Lisa looked at her crew. Amy was grinning despite the danger. Katie looked nervous but determined. Maya was calmly monitoring the elven transmissions. "They're splitting up," Maya reported. 3 ships moving to flank us from the left, 3 from the right. Lisa nodded. It was a standard hunting pattern. The elves planned to drive the human ship deeper into the asteroid field where it would have nowhere to run. The scrapyard queen entered the outer edge of the asteroid belt. Rocks floated past the windows, some as small as cars and others as large as buildings. Katie threaded the ship between them with practiced skill. The vessel groaned and creaked, but held together. Behind them, the elven ships began to have problems. Their long, elegant hulls were designed for open space combat. The tight quarters of the asteroid field forced them to slow down and move carefully. What had been graceful in open space became clumsy among the floating rocks. "They're having trouble keeping up," Katie observed. Lisa smiled. This was exactly what she had hoped for. The elven ships were powerful, but they were not built for this kind of flying. Dr. Naya Silvermoon sat at her station aboard Commander Zaralen's flagship. She was the fleet's chief scientist, and something was bothering her. The human ship was moving too well through the asteroids. Its power readings did not match what she expected from such a crude vessel. "Commander," she said, "I recommend caution." The human ship is not behaving as predicted. Zaralyn waved her concern away. It is a cargo hauler fleeing in panic. Once we have it cornered, this hunt will end quickly. Lieutenant Cassandra commanded one of the flanking ships. She was young for an elven officer, but had good instincts. As she watched the human vessel dart between asteroids, she began to feel uneasy. The humans seem to know exactly where they're going, she reported to the flagship. Of course they do, Zaralyn replied. They are running toward the center of the field where they think the rocks will protect them. They do not realize they are only trapping themselves. The chase continued deeper into the asteroid belt. The scrapyard queen wove between floating mountains of stone with incredible agility. Sometimes Katie had to roll the ship on its side to fit through narrow gaps. Other times she dove under massive rocks that would have crushed them flat. The elven ships struggled to follow. Their biohulls were sensitive to impacts, and they could not risk scraping against the asteroids. They had to take longer routes around the larger obstacles, which let the human ship pull ahead. Amy Foster was busy in the engine room, making small adjustments to their systems. She rerouted power from non-essential equipment and fine-tuned the engines for maximum maneuverability. The ship responded like a dancer, spinning and weaving through the deadly obstacle course. How was she doing that? Dr. Silvermoon wondered, aloud as she watched the human ship perform an impossible turn around a spinning asteroid. Luck, Admiral Velthari said from his command ship. Primitive desperation. It will not last long. But Naya Silvermoon was not convinced. She had studied human technology and found it crude but effective. They built things to work in harsh conditions. Their ships might look terrible, but they were surprisingly durable. Maya Singh was monitoring elven communications and picked up something interesting. Captain, she said quietly, they're getting frustrated. I can hear it in their transmissions. Lisa nodded. Frustrated enemies made mistakes. The elves were used to quick, clean victories. They were not prepared for a long chase through dangerous terrain. The scrapyard queen reached a particularly dense cluster of asteroids. The rocks were packed so tightly together that there seemed to be no way through. Katie slowed the ship and studied the maze carefully. There, she said, pointing at what looked like solid stone. There's a gap just wide enough for us. The ship, squeezed between two massive asteroids, with only feet to spare on either side. The hull scraped against rock and sent showers of sparks flying past the windows. But they made it through. The elven ships arrived at the same gap and stopped. There. Vessels were too wide to fit through the narrow opening. Find another way around, Zaralyn ordered. Lieutenant Cassandra studied her navigation display. The nearest alternate route will add 20 minutes to our pursuit. Then we follow it, the commander replied with growing anger. By the time the elven ships worked their way around the obstacle, the scrapyard queen had gained a significant lead. Lisa used the time to position her ship exactly where she wanted it. Are we ready, Amy? She called to the engine room. All systems standing by, Amy replied. Just give the word. Lisa looked at the tactical display. The elven ships were converging on their position from 3 different directions. They thought they had the human ship trapped in a dead-end canyon between several massive asteroids. What they did not know was that this particular canyon was not as empty as it appeared. Amy Foster had been busy during their long chase through the asteroid field. She had activated systems that had been carefully hidden for years. Maya, open a channel to the elven fleet, Lisa ordered. The communication system crackled to life. Commander Zaralyn's voice came through clearly. Human ship, you are trapped, she announced with satisfaction. Power down your engines and prepare to be destroyed. Lisa picked up the microphone and smiled. Commander, you made one critical mistake. And what is that? Zaralyn asked mockingly. You assumed we were running away from you, Lisa replied, when actually we were leading you exactly where we wanted you to go. There was a moment of silence from the elven fleet. Then Zaralin's voice returned, filled with confusion and the first hint of worry. What do you mean? Lisa looked at her crew. Amy was grinning from ear to ear. Katie had her hands poised over the flight controls. Maya was ready at the communication station. Amy? Lisa said calmly, show them what the Scrapyard Queen really is. Amy Foster's hands flew over her control panel in the engine room. She pressed a sequence of buttons that she had installed herself years ago. Throughout the Scrapyard Queen, hidden systems came to life with a deep humming sound. The transformation was incredible to watch. Hull plates that had looked random and mismatched suddenly shifted and aligned into coherent armor sections. What had appeared to be broken antenna arrays extended and locked into position as sophisticated sensor equipment. Most shocking of all, sections of the ship's hull opened like flower petals to reveal weapon systems that should not exist on a civilian cargo vessel. Commander, Zaralin stared at her display screen in disbelief. The pathetic human scrap heap was changing before her eyes into something completely different. Impossible, she whispered. The Scrapyard Queen's true nature was now visible. Rail guns emerged from hidden compartments along the hull. Missile launchers rose from concealed bays. Shield generators activated with a blue glow that surrounded the entire ship. What had looked like random junk was actually a sophisticated warship disguised as harmless cargo hauler. All elven vessels. Lisa Martinez's voice came through the communication system. You are now facing the UES Scrapyard Queen, a prototype. Combat vessel of the Human Defense Fleet. You have 3 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender. Admiral Velthari was so shocked he could barely speak. This is not possible. Our intelligence reports showed only civilian cargo ships in this system. Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see, Lisa replied calmly. Dr. Naya Silvermoon frantically scanned the human ship with her sensors. The readings were completely different now. Power output was 3 times higher than before. Weapon signatures matched military-grade equipment. Most disturbing of all, the ship's mass was wrong. It was much heavier than it appeared, which meant it had been carrying hidden armor and equipment all along. They have been planning this, she said to Commander Zaralin. Every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation. They were studying us, learning our weaknesses. Amy Foster activated the ship's stealth systems next. The Scrapyard Queen began to fade from elven sensors, becoming partially invisible. The technology was crude compared to their bioship's living hulls, but it was effective enough to cause targeting problems. Lieutenant Cassandra watched her weapon systems struggle to lock onto the human vessel. Commander, our targeting scanners cannot maintain contact. The ship is using some kind of interference field. Zaralin's perfect composure finally cracked. Fire everything. Destroy them now. The elven ships opened fire with their energy weapons. Beams of pure light lanced out toward the Scrapyard Queen. The bioweapons were designed to adapt to any defense, becoming more powerful as they analyzed their target. But the human ship did not try to defend against the energy beams. Instead, it moved. Katie Johnson threw the vessel into a spinning dive that took it behind a massive asteroid, just as the elven weapons fired. The energy beams struck solid rock instead of ship hull, blasting chunks of stone into space. They're using the asteroids as cover, Cassandra reported. Impossible, Admiral Velthari replied. No ship can maneuver that precisely in an asteroid field. He was wrong. The Scrapyard Queen danced between the floating rocks like it had been born there. Amy Foster's modifications to the engine systems allowed for rapid direction changes that would have torn apart a normal vessel. Katie Johnson's piloting skills, honed by years of flying through dangerous space, made the impossible look easy. The human ship disappeared behind another asteroid and emerged firing. Railguns sent solid projectiles at incredible speed toward the elven vessels. The bioship's living hulls, so effective against energy weapons, proved vulnerable to simple kinetic impact. Commander Zaralin's flagship shuddered as a railgun slug punched through its bio-armor. The living ship screamed in pain as it's nervous. System overloaded. Bioluminescent patterns flashed across the hull in distress signals. Hull breach on Deck 7, an Elven officer reported. The bio-armor cannot adapt fast enough to projectile weapons. How is this possible? Zaralin demanded. Our hulls are designed to counter any threat. Dr. Silvermoon had the answer. They are firing solid metal at a significant fraction of light speed. The bio-armor tries to adapt, but there is nothing to adapt to. It is simply raw kinetic energy. The battle became a three-dimensional chess game among the asteroids. The elven ships were powerful but clumsy in the tight quarters. Their long, graceful hulls were designed for open space combat, where they could use their superior firepower and range. The scrapyard, Queen used the asteroid field like a three-dimensional maze. It would appear from behind one rock to fire a quick burst, then disappear behind another before the elven ships could respond. Amy Foster had programmed the ship's computers with detailed maps of the asteroid field, giving them a huge advantage. Lieutenant Cassandra's ship took a direct hit from a railgun. The slug went completely through the biohull, leaving a perfectly round hole that spurted glowing biofluid into space. The living ship's scream of agony was picked up by her communication. System, the ship is dying, her medical officer reported with horror in his voice. The neural damage is too severe. Cassandra looked at her tactical display and realized the terrible truth. The humans had been studying elven technology for decades. They knew exactly how bioships worked and had designed weapons specifically. To exploit their weaknesses, Maya Singh opened a communication channel to the elven fleet. This is your final warning. Surrender now or face complete destruction. Never, Admiral Velthari snarled. The Stellar Empire does not surrender to primitives. Then you will learn why humans have survived long enough to reach the stars. Maya replied with diplomatic politeness that somehow made her words more threatening. Amy Foster activated the final surprise. Throughout the asteroid field, chunks of space debris began to move. What the elves had assumed was natural wreckage suddenly came alive with weapons fire. Automated defense drones, disguised as floating junk, created a crossfire that made escape. Impossible. The elven ships found themselves trapped in a killing field of their own making. Every direction they turned brought them under fire from hidden weapons. The asteroids that had seemed like obstacles were actually concealed gun platforms. Dr. Naya Silvermoon watched the tactical display with growing admiration and terror. They have turned the entire asteroid field into a weapon, she said quietly. This is not random combat. This is art. Commander Zaralin's flagship tried to ram the Scrapyard Queen in a desperate attack. The dying bioship, its neural systems failing, hurled itself forward with the last of its strength. Bio-armor plates opened like wounds as the vessel prepared for impact. Katie Johnson saw the attack coming and did something impossible. She used the ship's modified engines to literally surf along the surface of the elven vessel, staying just inches above its hull, while Amy Foster fired point-blank into its neural cluster. The flagship died in convulsions. Its bioluminescent hull flickered and went dark as its organic brain shut down forever. The beautiful vessel that had seemed so alive just moments before became nothing more than drifting metal and dead tissue. 2 more elven ships suffered the same fate as human weapons found their weak points. Railgun slugs punched through bio-armor like it was paper. Missile strikes targeted the neural centers that controlled the living hulls. Each death was accompanied by sounds of organic agony that made even the humans uncomfortable. Lieutenant Cassandra watched her fleet being systematically destroyed and made a decision that went against everything she had been taught about elven honor. She activated her surrender beacon. "All human vessels," she broadcast. "This is Lieutenant Cassandra of the Stellar Empire. I formally surrender my ship and crew." Maya Singh accepted the surrender with professional courtesy. Surrender acknowledged. Power down all weapons and prepare to be boarded. Admiral Velthari was furious. "Lieutenant, you have disgraced the Empire. Fight to the death. The death of my crew will not restore your wounded pride." Cassandra replied with surprising courage. One more elven ship joined her in surrender as its captain realized the hopelessness of their situation. The others continued fighting and were destroyed one by the relentless human attack. When the battle ended, the asteroid field was full of drifting wreckage. Of the 6 elven ships that had entered the field as hunters, only 2 remained. Intact, both had surrendered. The Scrapyard Queen hung motionless among the floating rocks, her hull scarred but intact. The disguised warship had fulfilled her purpose perfectly. The Empire's invincible fleet had been annihilated by a single human vessel that they had mocked as primitive junk. Lisa Martinez looked at the tactical display and allowed herself a small smile. The elves had learned a valuable lesson about judging enemies by their appearance. Unfortunately for most of them, it had been their last lesson. The aftermath of the battle hung heavy in the cold space around the asteroid field. Pieces of elven bioships drifted past the Scrapyard Queen's windows like the remains of dead sea creatures. Some fragments still glowed with fading bioluminescence, their organic systems slowly dying in the vacuum. Captain Lessa Martinez stood on the bridge surveying the destruction. 4 elven warships had been completely destroyed. 2 others hung powerless in space, their crews having surrendered when they realized the hopelessness of their situation. "Damage report," Lisa called to her crew. Amy Foster climbed up from the engine room, wiping her hands on a rag. "Hull integrity is at 80%. We took some hits, but nothing critical. The armor held up better than expected." Katie Johnson was running diagnostics on the navigation systems. "Engines are running hot, but stable. We can maintain full power for another 6 hours if needed." Maya Singh looked up from her communication station. "I'm receiving distress signals from the surviving elven ships. They're requesting medical assistance." Lisa nodded. "Prepare a boarding party. We'll help there." "Wounded." Lieutenant Cassandra's voice came through the communication system. Her ship was drifting nearby with a massive hole punched through its biohull. "Human vessel. This is Lieutenant Cassandra. We have multiple casualties, and our medical bay is damaged." "Understood," Maya replied. "We're sending over medical supplies and personnel." Amy Foster gathered medical equipment while Katie prepared a shuttle. Lisa decided to go herself to assess the situation. As the captain, it was her responsibility to ensure prisoners were treated properly. The shuttle docked with the elven vessel through an emergency airlock. Lisa stepped inside and was immediately struck by how different the ship was from her own. The corridors were grown rather than built, with walls that curved organically like the inside of a living creature. Bioluminescent strips provided soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Lieutenant Cassandra met them at the airlock. She was tall and graceful like all elves, but her silver hair was disheveled and her white uniform was stained with the glowing fluid that served as blood in bioships. She looked at Lisa with a mixture of respect and confusion. "I do not understand," Cassandra said. "Your people have every right to execute us as prisoners. Why do you offer medical aid?" Lisa helped carry medical supplies toward the ship's medical bay, because treating prisoners well is the mark of a civilized species. Dr. Naya Silvermoon was working frantically over wounded elven crew members in the medical bay. The ship's organic healing systems had been damaged in the battle, forcing her to use primitive manual techniques. She looked up when the humans entered. "I need biogel for the neural injuries," she said without preamble, "and stabilizers for the hull breach trauma." Amy Foster opened her medical kit and pulled out human equivalents. "These should work. Our biochemistry is different, but the basic principles are the same." As they worked together to treat the wounded, Dr. Silvermoon began to understand something important about humans. They were not the mindless savages the Empire had believed them to be. Their medical techniques were crude but effective. More importantly, they showed genuine concern for their enemy's welfare. "Your ship," Silvermoon said to Lisa while they worked. "It was never really a cargo hauler, was it?" Lisa smiled grimly. "Every human merchant vessel in space carries hidden weapons. We learned early that looking helpless was better than looking dangerous. How many ships like yours exist?" Cassandra asked. "Enough," Lisa replied. "The galaxy is not a safe place for species that appear weak." On the bridge of the other surviving elven ship, Admiral Velthari was monitoring the rescue operations with growing anger. He had managed to keep his vessel intact by staying at the edge of the battle, but now he faced the humiliation of being captured by primitives. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving orders from Imperial Command. They want a full report on what happened here." Velthari looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his once proud fleet. How could he explain this disaster? How could he tell the Empire that their most advanced warships had been destroyed by a single human vessel disguised as scrap? "Tell them we encountered unexpected resistance," he said finally. "Sir, they're asking for details about human military capabilities." Velthari was quiet for a long moment. The truth was that he had no idea what human military capabilities really were. If this single disguised cargo hauler could destroy an elven battle group, what could a proper human war fleet accomplish? Back on the scrapyard Queen, Maya Singh was analyzing the communications traffic she had intercepted during the battle. The information was disturbing and enlightening at the same time. "Captain," she called to Lisa when she returned from the elven ship, "I've been monitoring Imperial transmissions. This attack was not authorized by their government." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Commander Zaralin was acting on her own initiative. She wanted to make an example of humanity to impress her superiors. The official Imperial fleet doctrine is to avoid conflict with unknown military capabilities. This was important information. It meant the elves were not necessarily committed to war with humanity. Zaralin had been a rogue commander seeking personal glory. Amy Foster joined them. On the bridge, "The elven medical officer wants to talk to you, Captain. She says it's important." Dr. Naya Silvermoon came aboard the Scrapyard Queen an hour later. She looked around at the human ship's crude but functional interior with new appreciation. Every system was designed for reliability under harsh conditions. Nothing was wasted on appearance. "Captain Martinez," she said formally, "I wish to request asylum." Lisa was surprised. "You want to defect?" "I want to learn," Silvermoon replied. "Your people have achieved something remarkable. You have taken inferior resources and created superior results through pure ingenuity." She gestured at the ship around them. "This vessel should not exist. By all laws of physics and engineering, it should have fallen apart years ago. But instead, it defeated 6 of our most advanced warships." Amy Foster grinned. "It's not about having the best parts. It's about making whatever parts you have work together." "Exactly," Silvermoon said. "The Empire builds perfect ships for perfect conditions. But space is not perfect. It is chaotic and dangerous. Your approach is better suited to reality." Lisa considered the request. Having an elven scientist aboard could provide valuable intelligence about Imperial technology and intentions. But it would also create diplomatic complications. "I'll consider your request," she said finally. Lieutenant Cassandra's voice came through the communication system. "Captain Martinez, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting an Imperial patrol fleet approaching this system. 3 heavy cruisers and their escorts." Lisa felt her stomach drop. The Scrapyard Queen was powerful, but she could not fight an entire patrol fleet. Her ship had been designed for surprise attacks and hit-and-run tactics, not extended battles against overwhelming odds. "How long until they arrive?" she asked. 4 hours at current speed," Cassandra replied. Maya Singh was already working on the problem. "I can send a message to Earth requesting immediate assistance, but the nearest human fleet is 2 days away." Lisa looked at her tactical display. They were trapped in the asteroid field with 2 crippled elven ships and a large Imperial force approaching. The smart thing to do would be to abandon the prisoners and run. But that would go against everything humanity stood for. "We're not leaving," she announced to her crew. Amy Foster nodded approvingly. "What's the plan, Captain?" Lisa studied the tactical display more carefully. The asteroid field was large and complex. If they could position themselves correctly, they might be able to use the same tactics that had worked against Zeralin's fleet. "We're going to teach the Imperial Navy the same lesson we taught their advanced scouts," she said. "That looking dangerous is less important than actually being dangerous." Dr. Silvermoon spoke up. "The patrol fleet commander is Admiral Vexmore. He is cautious and intelligent, not like Zeralin. He will not underestimate you." "Good," Lisa replied with a smile that would have made a shark proud. "That means he'll bring enough ships to make this interesting." The crew of the Scrapyard Queen began preparing for another battle. This time they would be facing a proper Imperial fleet with experienced commanders who would not make the mistake of underestimating human capabilities. But Lisa Martinez had spent her entire career preparing for exactly this kind of fight. Empire was about to learn why humanity had earned its place among the stars through determination, ingenuity, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up when faced with impossible odds. Admiral Vexmore arrived at the edge of the Kefter asteroid field with 3 heavy cruisers and 6 escort vessels. His fleet was 10 times larger than the force that had been destroyed, and he had no intention of repeating Commander Zeralin's mistakes. The Elven Admiral was old even by Elven standards, with silver hair that had turned white at the temples. He had fought in dozens of campaigns and earned his rank through careful planning rather than reckless bravery. When he saw the wreckage of Zeralin's fleet floating among the asteroids, he felt no surprise, only grim confirmation of his worst fears. "Communications," he ordered. "Open a channel to the human vessel." Captain Lisa Martinez appeared on his main screen. She looked tired but determined, sitting in the command chair of her patched-together ship. Behind her, Vexmore could see the crude but functional bridge of the Scrapyard Queen. "Admiral Vexmore," Lisa said formally. "I assume you're here about the recent unpleasantness." The Elven Admiral studied her carefully. This human woman had just destroyed 6 Imperial warships with a single vessel. She deserved his full attention and respect. "Captain Martinez," he replied, "I am here to investigate an incident that has left 4 of our ships destroyed and 2 more disabled. I am also here to prevent any further bloodshed." Lisa leaned forward in her chair. "That depends entirely on your intentions, Admiral." Vexmore had already made his decision during the long journey to the system. The tactical reports from Lieutenant Cassandra had been disturbing reading. Humans were clearly more advanced than anyone had realized, and they had been hiding their capabilities for years. "My intentions are to resolve this situation diplomatically," he said. "I have authorization from the Imperial Council to negotiate." Dr. Naya Silvermoon, who was now officially serving as a liaison aboard the Scrapyard Queen, stepped into view of the camera. Her presence caused surprised murmurs on the Imperial bridge. "Admiral," she said, "I have spent the last several hours studying human technology and methodology. I believe the Empire has made a serious error in judgment regarding this species." Vexmore nodded slowly. He had come to the same conclusion himself. "Dr. Silvermoon, please return to your own people. We have much to discuss." "With respect, Admiral, I formally request permission to continue my research here. The humans have agreed to share their knowledge in exchange for our own." This was exactly what Vexmore had hoped to avoid. If word spread that Imperial scientists were defecting to study human technology, it would cause panic throughout the Empire. But he also recognized that Silvermoon was too valuable to lose. "Very well," he said finally. "Continue your work, but maintain regular communication with Imperial. Command: Lieutenant Cassandra's damaged ship was slowly being repaired with human assistance." Amy Foster had brought over a team of engineers who were teaching Elven crew members how to patch biohull breaches using human techniques. The collaboration was producing remarkable results. "Your people have a different approach to problem solving," Cassandra observed as she watched a human engineer weld a metal patch over a living hull section. "We fix things instead of replacing them," Amy replied. "When you don't have unlimited resources, you learn to make do with what you have." The young Elven officer was beginning to understand something important. The Empire's wealth and advanced technology had made them complacent. They built perfect ships for perfect conditions and assumed their superiority would always protect them. Humans, on the other hand, had developed their technology under constant threat. Every system was designed to work even when damaged. Every ship was built to survive in a hostile universe where help might not be coming. Maya Singh was coordinating communications between all parties involved in the crisis. She had established translation protocols that allowed humans and elves to communicate effectively, and she was working to prevent any misunderstandings that might lead to renewed violence. "Admiral Vexmore," she said during one of their many conversations, "humanity does not seek conflict with the Stellar Empire. We only want to be treated as equals in galactic commerce." The Elven Admiral considered this carefully. The balance of power had shifted dramatically in the last few hours. Humanity was clearly capable of defending itself, and their technology was more advanced than anyone had suspected. "What assurances can you give that human aggression will not threaten Imperial interests?" he asked. Lisa Martinez answered that question directly. "Admiral, we are not the aggressors here. Your people attacked us without provocation. We defended ourselves using the minimum force necessary to survive." She gestured at the tactical display showing the battle damage. "If we had wanted to cause maximum destruction, we could have targeted life support systems instead of weapons. Your survivors are alive because we chose to spare them." This was a critical point that had not been lost on Vexmore. The humans had shown remarkable restraint for a species that was supposedly primitive and savage. They had followed the conventions of civilized warfare, even when fighting for their lives. Katie Johnson was using a lull in hostilities to study the Imperial fleet through long-range sensors. The Elven ships were impressive, but she could see weaknesses that human tactics could exploit. Their formation was too rigid, their movements too predictable. "Captain," she said quietly, "if shooting starts again, I think we can handle them." Lisa nodded, but hoped it would not come to that. The Scrapyard Queen had been lucky in the first battle. Fighting an entire patrol fleet would be a much greater challenge. "Admiral," Velthari was growing increasingly agitated as negotiations continued. He had been humiliated by his defeat and wanted revenge. When Admiral Vexmore called for a private conference among the Elven commanders, Velthari made his position clear. "We cannot allow this insult to stand," he declared. "The Empire's reputation is at stake. The Empire's survival is at stake, Dexmore replied coldly. If humans can do this with one disguised cargo hauler, what can they do with a proper battle? Fleet, Lieutenant Cassandra supported her senior admiral. Commander Zaralin underestimated them completely. These humans are not primitive barbarians. They are a warrior species that has learned to appear harmless. The debate continued for hours, but eventually, pragmatism won over pride. The Imperial Council had sent clear instructions to avoid escalation with humanity until their true capabilities could be assessed. Dr. Silvermoon presented her preliminary report to both fleets simultaneously. Her findings were shocking to the Elven delegation and gratifying to the humans. Human technology appears inferior on the surface, she explained, but it is actually optimized for different priorities. Where we value elegance and perfection, they value reliability and adaptability. She showed tactical recordings from the battle. Their ship looks like scrap metal, but every component serves multiple purposes. Their weapons appear crude, but they are devastatingly effective against our bio-armor. The final point was the most important. Humans have been preparing for war with superior opponents for decades. Every merchant vessel is a potential warship. Every civilian is trained in basic combat techniques. They are not just a species that has achieved spaceflight. They are a species that has weaponized their entire civilization. Admiral Dexmore made his decision. Captain Martinez, the Stellar Empire is prepared to offer humanity full recognition as an equal galactic civilization. We propose immediate cessation of hostilities and the establishment of formal diplomatic relations. Lisa smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Admiral, humanity accepts your proposal. The negotiations that followed established new trade agreements that were far more favorable to humanity than anything previously offered. The Empire agreed to share certain technologies in exchange for human manufacturing techniques and agricultural innovations. Most importantly, word of the battle spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Other species that had dismissed humanity as primitive suddenly began reconsidering their positions. Trade delegations that had ignored human requests for meetings suddenly found time in their schedules. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The species that had turned scrap into starships, who had disguised warships as cargo haulers, who had fought like devils when cornered, had announced their arrival on the galactic stage in the most emphatic way possible. Commander Zara Len's body was recovered from the wreckage of her flagship and given a proper military funeral. Despite their differences, humans and elves worked together to honor the dead from both sides. As the crisis wound down, Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of her ship and looked out at the stars. The Scrapyard Queen had done her job perfectly. The galaxy now knew that humanity would not be victims. Amy Foster joined her at the window. "So what happens now, Captain?" Lisa smiled and patted the hull of their ship. "Now we go home and build more ships like this one. Because something tells me we're going to need them." The Empire had mocked their scrap ship right up until it wiped out their fleet. That mistake would not be repeated by anyone who valued their continued existence. Humanity had earned its place among the stars through blood, determination, and the kind of stubborn ingenuity that turned impossible odds into inevitable victory.